Henry Kissinger said something which is worth repeating here, which is pretty much my own view, if I can find it. I wrote this down in a meeting I had with him. He said he did not believe China has a military-based policy designed to achieve military domination, nor is its policy about annexing contiguous territories, in other words, the countries around it. He thought its overarching policy objective was to keep the US away from Chinese borders. He said he did not believe China wants a confrontation with the United States. He said, being Chinese, the Chinese will develop a concept of coexistence. So basically what they're saying is, until not many years ago, the US Pacific Fleet drove 12 miles off the edge of the Chinese territorial sea on the Chinese continental shelf, you know. Could you imagine the attitude of the United States if the Chinese Blue Water Navy was sailing 12 miles off the territorial sea of California? I mean, there'd be outrage everywhere. So what the Chinese have been doing is getting what's called in the trade sea denial, pushing the American fleet off their coast, you know, broadly, this is it. But the Chinese interests are not in the east, they are in the west. China's real interests are in the stand countries, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan. China will control, not control is not the right word, but through the Belt and Road and the capital programs, if you go from Wuhan, the city where the rivers cross and the railways cross, the Chinese will be the major influence between everything between Wuhan and Istanbul.
What's their interest in doing? Why are they heading west?
Well, partly to increase their strategic power, and secondly, all of the old tech, which has been replaced by the new tech as they climb out of the middle income trap, that is steel, glass, cement. People say, well, what are they going to do with their big cement plants, their big steel plants, their glass plants? What are they going to do with it? The answer is what they're going to do with it is push it down the road. They're going to put it into Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan. You know, this is where Chinese interest right now. You don't get this in the Australian public debate because it's informed by the spooks. You know, it's informed by our foreign policy debate now in Canberra is informed by the security agencies. You know, so you're not getting a macro view. You know, a macro view of China as it really is. I mean, China wants its front doorstep and its front porch, that is Taiwan, its sea. It doesn't want American naval forces influencing it. It wants access out of its coast into the deeper waters of the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. That's what it's about, fundamentally.
Well, let's go
back. Could they have had this anyway? Did they need to build the islands? Probably not. You know, did I think it was incautious of them to do it? Probably yes. But would we appreciate having you know, would any country appreciate a fleet as large and as powerful as the United States 12 miles off your coast, when considering you are a bigger state than they are? China is not about turning over the existing world order. It only wants to reform it. And it wants to reform it because of its own scale, right? It's signed up to the WTO. It's signed up to the IMF. It's signed up to the World Bank. It's signed up to the WHO, the World Health Organization. And as you read recently, it now wants to sign up to the TPP, you know. In other words, it's the proselytiser of globalisation in the world. It's not pursuing, this is not the old Soviet Union pursuing some international ideology, some, whether universal or otherwise. It wants to be in the existing order, has signed up the existing order, but wants it reformed so it's fair. I mean, look, the Americans knocked them off. As China grew, their share of the IMF votes should have grown. The Americans denied them. As China grew, their shares of the World Bank should have grown. The Americans denied them, you know. The Americans say, we believe in, you know, the free passage of ships, but they won't sign up to the international law of the sea. The Chinese are not about turning over the international system. That's the key point. What the Chinese want, I think, is respect for what they've created. I mean, what were we to leave them with? I mean, our central proposition should be that the rise of China is entirely valid. What were we to leave them? To be hanging around in poverty, 5 families to a little house, 1 toilet, bad sanitation, no education, for 20% of humanity. 20% of humanity drags themselves out of poverty, and we say, oh, no, this is not right. You've got to stay in the mud. Know your place, stay down there in the mud. And the Chinese say, well, hang on, it's taken us 40 years to get to $10,000 US per head. Isn't that good for us? Isn't that good for Australia? Isn't that good for the world? Cheaper goods, buying your iron ore, selling your cheap, flat screen TVs, all the rest of the thing. Isn't that good? Isn't it better that 20% of humanity being dragged out of poverty? We should say yes. I think what the Chinese want is the acknowledgement of what they have, the validity of what they've done, and what they have created. The legitimacy. The legitimacy of the rise of China from its colonial past and from its poverty.